Hi, everyone. Kathy Beltran with Sacred Dance with Trance. I am super excited to have physical medium Kai Muegge. Now I'm going to say that right. From Germany with us today, sharing his beautiful light with us. He is also, I believe, in the pre-post that I did, he also has a website called felixcircle.blogspot.com. So please check that out. So everybody, welcome Kai with us.
Thank you so very much, dear Kathy. Your gratefulness goes rightly back to you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I know that how I usually start the interviews is people love to hear about someone's development, how they started, what's going on, and how they, all the things that they came, the obstacles that they had. I usually like to start out with, how did this all begin for you? And people will go back to when they were younger, how they got onto this path of mediumship, which led to trance or physical mediumship. Could you tell us a little bit about how that started with you?
Yes, of course. In my case, it was that I was born into a teacher's household, which was very rational and very strict. And my story goes that from a very early age on, I experienced that I dropped out of my body during the nights. And I found myself in the house of my grandparents. We were living at that time, where we are still living actually, and where the Felix Circle's home base is actually. And I started to converse with the sleeping spirits of my parents and of my grandparents. And very soon after, I encountered more spirits living in the house. I do not exactly where they came from,
wow.
But they were there. And some were very nice, and others did frighten me because, for example, they were moving very fast. For example, I remember very well a spirit entity that was moving in the cellar very fast all the time from one room to the other, and it did frighten me a lot. I still see it in front of me. And in the mornings, I was sharing these experiences with my parents, and they could not actually sort it out what was going on. And specifically not when I broadened that experience and recognized I can even leave the house. And within a year, I learned I only need to think of places I had heard over the day and could be there. And at that time, I was around 4 or 5 years of age.
Wow, that's young.
Absolutely. And it was even before I was brought to school. I was going to school. But I was already enabled to write. And I was starting even to write down what I was experiencing. But for my parents, the situation became graver and graver. Yes.
I bet.
What is wrong with that boy? So then a time started in which my parents were very irritated. The school times began, and I could not really find myself amongst the others. And when you see images of me of maybe around 8, 9, 10 years of age, you see a very slim and a very gray boy with very big and thick glasses. And when I was 11, finally an initiation-like experience happened. And 4 years later, when I was 15, I founded my first circle for a physical seance room. So I'm now 49. It's now 43 years ago that I founded my first circle. It was on a boarding school where it was a tradition to bring all the boys of the family to. My father was there. My grandfather was there. It was the Internathaus Rotraut on the island Föhr. It is a Northern Sea German island, a very tiny island. and a very beautiful boarding school. And it was 3 years, 3.5 years after this initiation-like experience, and the distance between these times, I was frantically reading into the literature, because this initiation was the confrontation with spirit entering our world, and entering our world in not necessarily a friendly way. It was happening in the house of my best school comrades, a pair of twins, and there a poltergeist case broke loose,
Oh,
a
good.
grave poltergeist case. And over 4 months, I was stunningly witnessing what was going on there. And all what I had experienced in the 5 or 6 years before, um, this dropping out of myself, this conversing with spirits, having spirits at my side and consulting me, all that changed. The tone of them changed, and I had the feeling that what was going on had to do with me, that it was not coincidentally that I was present at that poltergeist case that concerned the family and not me. But I was there to be shown uh, things. And as I said, like frantically, I started to read into the German literature. And after 3 years, I was ready on the boarding school to try that all out. And as I said, I was 15. I had my school comrades there. It was every Tuesday in the house of the girls. The teachers had their sports evening. And for 1.5 years, this first circle was active. And like all the circles I had in the last 34 years, also this first circle did immediately work and showed up like natural or like naturally physical phenomena.
Oh my goodness.
So,
That
and
was
that
so
is the
young.
start.
So young. I mean, most people can relate to like the astral traveling in between, having just, sporadic moments of remembering these experiences. But for you to be so young and then mentally know all you had to do was think and you would be there.
Indeed.
Wow, that's just wow to me. And then to have this start your circle at 15 years old. I mean, that is meant to be. That was a path you're supposed to go down. And you knew this very early on. And that's the part I like to also emphasize to the people that are watching these videos, is this is something, they say that physical mediums, there's not very many of them in the world or here. And they usually experience these things when they're younger. So, wow, I'm just amazing, Kai. And just so you know, I love your glasses. Love those glasses that you have on.
Thank you very much.
You're so
Thank you.
welcome. So you have been developing for 43 years. And
Yes.
wow, that's just amazing. You've always been interested in the physical mediumship then? That's the first place that you went? It was the physical mediumship?
Absolutely. And I need to admit that I had that first circle actually nearly when it started. That was 2 years before I, for the first time, stumbled into a trance circle for the first time. So I was from the beginning on, and in the first place, um, fascinated and grabbed by physical mediumship. And I need to admit that actually what we call mental mediumship, what is not the opposite, in the contrary, originally, historically seen at the beginning of the movement, both were tightly clinging together, mental mediumship and physical mediumship, that were humans who were separating it basically out of human interests. But mental mediumship did never really work out for me. I found all what I was looking for in my metaphysical interests within the experiment in physical mediumship, and there was all the evidence, and there was the objectiveness. Everybody could see it. It was unquestionable that it was there. And yeah, so it was always, always, always physical mediumship.
Physical. Can you explain what physical mediumship is for our viewers?
Yes. Um, Actually, physical mediumship and its sub-forms, like, for example, spiritual healing is a sub-form of physical mediumship. But physical mediumship basically is not the try to reach out with the mind into a spirit world or in spirit worlds to achieve forms of information there, but to create a portal here in our three-dimensional realm, to create a portal out of group dynamics actually, and psychotechniques, if you wish so. And this portal is then being built with offers to the spirit world to enter ours. And this is, by the way, an ancient old practice. The Northern American Indians, for example, know that practice of bringing the spirits onto our realm or into our realm very, very well. And there are ceremonies in which that is in which that is happening, actually. Energetically, exactly the same things are happening like in the seance of the Western world. And here we very early encounter a basic truth. The whole Western movement that started 1850 approximately is, of course, an expression of that ancient old business of mankind, of dealing with the unseen worlds and with the spirit world. So it's only another mirror for this, another form of expression in front of another socio-cultural background, of course. And that's why the modi operandi are quite different, of course, in a Northern American Indian ceremony or in a Western hemisphere experimental physical seance, of course. So, but that's basically is it. You create a portal for spirits to step into our realm or onto our plane and actually constitute themselves there in a way and form that we can recognize that with our perception. And that can, and you know, our perception, we smell, we feel, we touch, we hear and see. And these are exactly the ways in which spirit constitutes or materializes, if you wish so.
Wow. It made me think of a question here. I know I said earlier that there's only so many, or so I've read, that there's only so many physical mediums out here in the world. Are there signs that one would know if they were a physical medium, or that you could observe in somebody else without them knowing? Like they had no idea that they were a physical medium. Is there signs that you would know of? Or is it just they're telling you?
Yeah, I mean, there could be signs, but these signs do not necessarily tell you that then in a development a physical mediumship is made out of you. For example, influencing electrical devices would be such a sign. But I would like to recommend everybody, and this was part of our work from the beginning on, to inspire and to motivate as many people as we can motivate, to found own experimental circles, you bring the magical worldview into your own world when you start to close up your room. You sit there with friends, 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, and you have beautiful smells and beautiful music, and you start to call the spirits in. And when you do that with an upright heart and with a strong commitment, I can tell you the spirits will answer. So for everybody who is questioning himself or herself, maybe, am I gifted in some sort? Sit down and try yourself out. But of course, not before you have read a lot about that topic. That is
Yes.
very, very important. I always say it's like driving a car. First, make your license.
It's true. It's true to learn all that you can first. Educate yourself. Um,
Yes.
I ask this question to a lot of people, and some believe it and some don't. They don't use that term, but I ask about sitting in the power, and is it required? Do you sit in the power?
Um, yeah, sit in the power. I mean, I have, if, un, until a few years ago, I prepared every sitting of mine by meditating up to 3 hours in the seance room the same day. Yeah, yeah, actually, our first hosts um, still know that and will still remember that. But in the meantime, my life is my personal life um, is so full of giving seances, that I'm sitting in the power anyway all the time, and I need actually also a, a few or a little bit of earthly time also. Yes, so um, I have my moments with spirit, but I do not anymore prepare myself because I do not need it. The
Yeah.
seances work very powerfully with strictest control, even if I do not meditate or sit in the power.
Power. Well, I mean, after 43 years, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't need to anymore do all that extra stuff, So that's pretty amazing.
Mhm.
Some people call it meditation. Some people say sitting in the power, so I always like to just ask that question. Um,
Of course.
so do you feel that for a beginner, they should sit in the power or meditate with spirit and blend with them?
Oh yeah, definitely. Specifically, the trainings you are usually stumbling upon when you are doing meditation or led meditation, like visualization is very important, of course, and um, finding your midst is, of course, extremely important, because in the seance room, specifically in the experimental um, circle that is building up, um, people are needed who have found their midst, so to speak, personalities who have matured to a certain degree, and that have um, a certain knowledge. And I believe meditative techniques are basic part. If you are spiritually interested, you have for sure trained yourself over several years in regards to meditation, and I believe that is a very, very necessary thing, even though um, I was in earlier ages much, much more interested in Eastern philosophy and in Eastern techniques, and the question, who am I and what is I and what is consciousness, and so forth. But in the meantime, I have detached myself from these questions, and yeah, and am fully or am fully working with the contents we are actually learning from our spirit guides that stands at the moment in the middle of our interest here. Yes, but you are right, absolutely, meditation should be a part of it.
Well, I think that, you know, you're developing, but you're also working on your spiritual side as well, growing
Yes.
and evolving that way. I
Hmm.
like to make sure people understand that because you're constantly growing every day and learning more about yourself. And like how you're saying that I am, you know, all of that. So balancing all those areas of your life, not just diving into the mediumship part, but growing yourself as well. Is very
Absolutely.
important. Um, so do you get guidance from your spirit team for you or your circle? Do they often give you guidance for your development?
Yes, regularly, and it usually happens in moments which are more still, or moments in stillness, and suddenly the information pops up, and these are then yes, things that concern uh, many different regards. Let it be partnership, let it be things I'm working at with a client of mine, for example. So yes, spirit is actually bringing information in, yes,
Okay, beautiful.
and also very practical and pragmatical,
Mhm.
specifically in regards to seances we are maybe holding in the evening, and then we are given very specified information in regards to the setting that is being wished for the evening. So very different kinds of information are actually being brought in. Hmm.
There's a question that people here, I'm in the US. So when we think about channeling,
Hmm.
to us, that means trance, actually. You know,
Hmm.
we're getting
Hmm.
communication. So would trance be the same as channeling, in your opinion?
Um, yeah, I mean, you can channel without necessarily being in deeper states of trance. I mean, we are teaching um, trance down to a point where it is not only fully separated from yourself, but also that you can um, stop your conscious participation. So you are actually sleeping away. Meanwhile, you are automatically talking or automatically sleeping. This is the most deepest form of trance speaking or bringing information forward in trance that we know. So, but of course, you can bring information forward in much, much lighter states of mind. So, but I also believe that in channeling there are always different states of trance involved. Indeed, yes, but basically it is the same.
Basically, okay. Can someone develop trance on their own, or do they have to be in a circle to develop?
Um, it depends how far you want to bring it. Yeah. Um, I mean, everybody can entrance him or herself very easily. The techniques are known, and um, but the question is, do you want to work with it? And if you want to work with it, it is highly recommended that you try yourself out, because you will stumble over elemental questions of your own trance work specifically when it is about bringing information forward from trance guides or from deceased people or whatever. And then there are questions coming up like, is it me or is it the trance guide? How many % of that speech is done by me or is done by the trance guide? And to fulfill that separation from your own um, speech, so to speak, we usually strongly recommend a home circle in which you can try yourself out, in which it is not embarrassing when you lose the connection to the guide, or when you recognize, oh, that's not the guide anymore speaking, it's me now. I stop it, guys, and we start again. And really, that I believe if you want to work with trance, you absolutely should train it in. And the home circle is the safest. I mean, you can sit for in front of strangers, but you won't feel good by doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I wanted to talk to you about your seances. Um, how many seances do you actually do in, say, a month? Or is it, do you only do so many a month? Because I believe, I would feel that would be very taxing on your physical body to do those just for one, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, Let me calculate how many that usually are, but I would estimate that we are giving in the month maybe around 10 to 12 seances.
Wow.
Oh yes, oh yes. We are. You need to know that I quit my job.
Wow.
I was working my whole life in the entertainment, in the software industry, in startup companies here in Germany, and at a certain point in time, I felt that I was um, overgiven a mission by the spirits, and they said, "This is what you are experiencing here. This is not for your cellar. If you want to behold that, you have to share it with people." And the decisions had to be made. And I mean, life is an experience, and how often in your life you feel that you have been given a mission by the spirit world. So I decided then actually to quit my regular job and started to become a traveling medium.
Wow.
I wanted to do that because the physical mediumship in my environment was always very strong. And we just had the revival of physical mediumship in the 1996. It was actually, the Skoll report was coming out in 1996. And we were only 6 years later, the Felix Circle was founded actually, and um, I found it um, very, very necessary to bring that out to the people and to show that to the people, and even to show that to parapsychologists, and show that to scientists, because I believed um, the whole world can profit from that. The implications behind of what is happening, they are so vast and mean to all of us, so important things. And so I started to quit my job, then my wife followed, and since then we are um, touring, so to speak, in small tours. They are all friends. These seances are never actually public. They are only semi-public, so friends of friends of friends and so forth. But we decided to amaze the world, because what we had at hand was so fascinating and so deeply changing us all that we believe this is a very important contribution to all the efforts in regards to a paradigm shift. We are all trying to move towards to. And so I had stressy jobs. I can tell you. Yeah, and I don't know what actually was stressy. I never would call it a job, of course, but when I compare it with the efforts or with the how much I felt drained after my former jobs, I believe it is something I can take. But you are right, it takes from the body. That is unquestioned. You have to give something from you. That is unquestioned. But I feel honored that I'm allowed to sacrifice that for that, as you are naming it, for that sacred connection that is existing here between us humans and interdimensional, so to speak, entities, and to that interdimensional form of communication, yes, with living entities outside of the human body. That is so spectacular. And so it's okay. Thank you for your concerns, but it's okay.
You actually, this always happens to me in the interview. So I have a list of questions and I have to just pay very close attention because I might ask you question number 3 and you've answered 5 of the next questions. So one of the
Okay.
questions a member had wanted me to ask is, why did you do the seances? You actually answered it before I could even ask it. And it's
Oh yeah,
beautiful because it's the way you're serving. You felt guided to serve spirit in this way and bring this beautiful way to serve back to the forefront. And I kind of feel the same way with the interviews, is that, I do this in my spare time, but I wanted to help this way to have people come together and share their development, the beautiful work that they do. And
superb, absolutely.
and again, I'm so grateful for you to do this. I wanted to see if you could remember the first experience or phenomena that you experienced in the very beginning. Can you remember one of the first things that just was like, whoa, to
Oh
you? And
yes, oh yes, oh yes.
can you share that?
It was, as I said, at the boarding school in the house of the girls, and it was in one of the rooms there, and we were sitting around on the beds. Actually, it was quite narrow actually, and the house was basically empty, and we were sitting in that tiny room with a candlelight, or even already in darkness at that times. And yes, one of the first phenomena we experienced on a very regular basis was that things were thrown out of the cupboard that was standing in the room, for example, or that we heard somebody coming up the stairs, but there was nobody.
Wow.
Or things we had positioned on the table that was standing in midst of us, and it was as if a power was pulling them from the table's surface down under the table. It was nearly so as if an unseen hand would come from under the table, grab for the objects and tried to um, pull it under the table. So these are very early memories.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yes,
That's
and
amazing to have those experiences so young.
absolutely. And today I I was afraid. I'm sure it did not really happen, but usually you are not confronting 14 or 15 years old pupils with things that are going on that way. But I did not know at that time what actually would come up, what would work. And in the end, we were all sitting there together in a form of childish fascination. At that time, I didn't know that that would become my basic life's path. Yes. So at that time, it was a childish and a little bit hysterical gaming around with forces we had no idea of, but we only recognized it worked.
Wow. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. So is a for physical mediumship, is a cabinet necessary? With the medium, does a medium always have to be in a cabinet?
No. But there should be one as a basic um, form of battery. I mean, it is not so fully clear why the spirits were demanding always that extra space for them. Sometimes this is the medium in, sometimes this is the medium out. In our case, it is so that the medium is actually during the phenomenal parts of the evening is not sitting in the cabinet. I am sitting together with the people in the circle, and the people left and right from me are holding my arms and legs and securing my arms and legs. The person left from me or right from me is holding my right limbs, and the person left from me is holding my left limbs. In my back is the cabinet, and that's the way how we are sitting, for example, in the darkness phases. You know, when you are experimenting with, and I purposefully call it that way, with occult forces, then actually darkness always plays a role. You can develop things into light, but darkness always plays a role. And so in these darkness phases, I am always sitting so tightly controlled. Um, but even though we are using the cabinet, you need to know the Felix circle, or I am trained. I am as the physical medium of the Felix circle. We have trained ourselves to sit actually in 3 sitting settings. The one is the classical cabinet sitting, but as I just explained, I am sitting actually in front of the cabinet. Only when the circle lead has to implement light of any degree, the medium is set free from its control and is allowed to retreat into the cabinet to shield itself from the light. But as soon as preparations are over, medium comes back out into the circle, is again held from the persons left and right, light is switched off, and we are going into the next phase or the next section of the seance, so to speak. But in our history, the spirits always recommended the cabinet. And now let me quickly tell you these different settings in which we sit. So the cabinet, classical cabinet situation, but then also what we are calling the advanced table setting in the tradition of Eusapia Palladino. She was a very famous Italian physical medium, and she, during the 30 years of her career, in which she stunned scientists from Europe to the States, she always sat at a table and had her clients, or the group, so to speak, at the table, and in her back was the cabinet. We are sitting in that setting as well. The only difference is that the cabinet is, in our case, 2 to 3 meter distant from us and not directly behind us, because In the cabinet are focus objects positioned, and meanwhile we are sitting at the table. The spirits are bringing oftentimes these focus objects from out of the cabinet onto the table, and we believed that it was not challenging enough to sit directly in front of that cabinet, so that's why it is in a distance. So, and then third setting is the healing session, of course, because spirit conversion has such a strong healing connection and always a healing undertone that we couldn't miss. Actually, the Felix Circle was once planned to be founded as a healing circle, but it did not work out because the spirit that should make it happen, my grandfather, who was an ophthalmologist, he did reject our request 2002 when we started the Felix Circle to become a healing circle. So we worked with other trance guides and became more or less this physical demonstrational form of circle. But as I said, healing played a role from the beginning on, with or without my grandfather. And 3 years ago, he finally popped up and said he's ready now and we can develop routines for him, trance routines for him. And
Wow.
since then, we are even working in a healing modus operandi as I had imagined it from the beginning on. So 3 settings: cabinet, table, and healing.
And healing. Beautiful, beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how you said that you moved the cabinet further away from the table, like you're always experimenting. Is that what you do with within the circle? You're always experimenting, seeing what else you can do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to never miss to show to the sitters that it is unquestionably an extra force that has here the control, and that it is never, never, never the medium that is grabbing for objects or is running around touching the people and such things. I mean, we are, you know, in somnambulism, as the French are calling it, many different things are thinkable. There only has a drop-in communicator to come in. You are usually expecting your regular guides, but then a drop-in communicator, a totally unexpected communicator, overtakes you, walks around with you, touches the people. The people think everything is like always, so this is spirits, and this are actually constituting forms of early materialization, which we feel here in the room, but actually it is the medium who was free and who walks through the room. And every medium should, firstly, to avoid in every case that such a thing could happen. Imagine how embarrassing that would be when the lights would go on and people would see you standing in midst of the room touching them.
Yes.
So every physical medium should highly be interested in being strictly secured on the chair. So we have these 2 controllers, and besides that, we are always looking for a setting that is persuading, you know, the glowing handkerchief that is taken over in the dark by materialized hands that float freely through the room, the famous spirit hands that popped up in seance rooms of the most early days until today. And when that happened, when that happens, we are, oh, excuse me, we are highly interested that the medium is not sitting too close to the handkerchief, that nobody could believe, is the medium somehow enabled to get, to reach out for the handkerchief? So our experimenting is mostly in regards to is the demonstration, because these demonstrations take a lot of energy and we like them to be persuasive. Is that the right word, persuasive? I believe so.
Yes. I wanted to, when you're talking about the spirit hands with the handkerchief, anything that you talk about within seance conditions, I have only observed either on YouTube or pictures or books or things like that. But I wanted to bring up over the weekend, I believe the Felix Circle blogspot, you guys released a article with images and pictures. And this was spirits materializing fully. So I actually have the picture here on my iPad. And I wanted to show this, but I'm sure we'll put all the tags in the interview. So there is that amazing, amazing photo. And then that is up close. Can you share a little bit about this?
Of course. From very early on in my mediumship, visitors or even circle members were proposing or were thinking about the possibility that full form materialization, which is, so to speak, the crown or the highest form of physical mediumship, to materialize spirits fully, that would actually happen in my mediumship also, because of, usually people were thinking about that because of the huge volumes of ectoplasm we were producing. And they said, when we have these masses of ectoplasm coming from the medium, then there is a possibility, at least, that spirits would materialize fully. But I was always very, very, very reluctant when people were speculating in that regards, because I know that spirits like to walk paths which have already been stepped upon, so to speak. So that means the history of physical mediumship shows us that these phenomena, where I don't want to say copied, but there was a clear range of phenomena that was achieved by spirit controls of that medium and spirit controls of this medium. And it was always, it looked that way as if, as I said, I usually use the word meme, that a meme is existent and that spirits somehow fulfill that meme. And so that means there's a medium that is working with a spirit guide, and the spirit guide has achieved this or that phenomena, and a meme is starting to exist. And this meme can then be overtaken by my own guide, and this phenomena is then happening in my seance room as well. So, and today we have at the moment worldwidely no physical medium which is actually demonstrating full form materialization mediumship. Maybe there are some unknown or behind the curtains, we don't know. But fact is, my guides could not link into any existing meme that is at the moment somehow available. I did not know if there was an opportunity or a possibility to develop an own meme in that regard, because to develop such a figure, I believe, is one of the most complex things these spirit guides can actually achieve. I mean, when Thomas Mann was for the first time sitting with Rudi Schneider in the rooms of the Technical Institute at the University of Munich, he was present when that illuminated handkerchief experiment was done, and he was later writing about it, and he was writing about his opinion that the phenomena itself sometimes seems to be like marginal or even small, but that the implications behind are enormous, absolutely, and really have things in charge for whole humanity. So it is absolutely not common that spirit guides produce such complex forms of expression. And I am usually a very humble guy, so I did not want um, to speculate loudly about full materializations or not in my seances. But 2 years ago, totally unexpected, in a seance for friends, suddenly their deceased little daughter stepped out of the cabinet.
Wow.
In the dark, this little lady was glowing by itself. So there was no light source. It was fully dark, and the curtains opened, and this little girl stepped out of the cabinet, and the brightest of her was her eyes. That was hypnotically attracting the views of the sitters that were sitting around. And that came totally unexpected. And I even could not believe it when I came out of the trance, that really had happened. But then the people who were sitting at that time, they made drawings and so forth, what they had seen. And you can see the drawings on our blog and even on a video that is recreating that moment in time. And from then on, spirits materialized fully, visibly, under different circumstances. So the ones came like this little lady in the darkness and self-illuminated. Then came some who brought their own light source. For example, an alleged Indian prince from the early 1800s materialized with a blue crystal on his forehead.
Wow.
And only that blue crystal did shimmer so brightly that the whole room was submerged into like waterly, in a waterly blue, shimmering. And um, then a third form is actually the materialization that can withstand the red light and is visible for everybody in the red light. So that's how it came. And in the last 2 years, we had many of these materializations come up. And I am never there when it happens.
Mhm.
And I am dependent on the in the end on the reports and what the sitters have observed. That is, by the way, one of the most difficult things for the deep trance medium, actually, to identify, because for you it is lost time. It is sleep. You sleep away, and more or less in the same moment you awake, but 2 hours have actually gone by, and the people are crazy. But there are so many fears in connection with this. For example, fears in regards to was everybody believing it? Do people believe it is a fraud? Do people maybe believe you are a fraud? To which point have the spirits brought it? This is always very difficult. You have these groups of people, and the spirits need to find an exact level, a level of expression, so to speak, that can be accepted by all these sitters. And that is not necessarily always achieved. Many times, respectively, I always calculate at least 10% of sitters for which it is too much, simply, you know. They cannot grab it. They fall in a state of cognitive dissonance. They cannot bring together what they have learned, what they were educated about, and what they are seeing here. And I have to accept that at a medium of that sort, and I have to live with that. And that was specifically in the beginning, sometimes very difficult
I
to
bet.
come out of the trance. What do the people think, and what did happen anyway?
Yeah.
So, but I have overcome that, and I have found a much stronger identity in my own mediumship. And in the end, I um, I I assure that I produce these things under my under my best uh, consciousness, so to speak, yes, and under my best will, and after best or alongside best spiritistic tradition. And if you believe it or not, that's your business, or how you look at it. That's absolutely the business of the other.
I think that the way you serve spirit and what you do with spirit, and you're listening to them, you're helping the spirit world. And for those people that are viewing this or attracted to your light, they see the work that you do, they're meant to. And for those that are questioning, that's something that they have to work out within themselves and their understanding and their involvement. And as far as like all the questioning of people that say, is he a fraud or is he not? I mean, I don't understand that. I feel like I feel with anybody else. If I see somebody, if I'm connected to somebody or I meet somebody, it's natural for me to feel the energy. And I will know if I'm feeling good energy or bad energy. And so so that's what they should also bring in when they're in the seance, and feeling that that connection to their soul, to their spirit guide or their team. I would think they would know it that way, but otherwise, so I'm glad that you are in a place where you're beyond that, where you don't worry about that. But I do want to ask you, do you know where you go when you go deep into trance?
Oh yeah. There is actually a meditative inner room or outer room, or however you want to call it. I am using that room for many decades as inner room of retreats, where I actually retreat myself to overhand my body, to make my body empty, actually, to overhand it to the spirit control, actually. And this is actually a visualized inner room, and I visualize myself there, and there is actually this silver cord thing going to my body that always reassures that this body will stay mine, will not be overtaken forever by the spirit, that in the end I will always slip back into my body, because after a time the spirits lose grip in my body, and um, they have to naturally leave my body, and that's the time when I, like naturally, slip back into my body. So it is a meditative inner room.
Wow. When you talk about the silver cord, I believe Edgar Cayce had mentioned that somewhere. And I've
Yeah.
seen that beautiful cord myself, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you this. I've seen there's a lot of videos of you and the work that you do. Could you tell us what an apport is?
Mm-hmm. An apport is usually an object that existed on Earth before, or that has existed on Earth before, and that is transported from another place into the seance room. Now, the word apport is oftentimes falsely used. Even we use it basically falsely, because from the many objects we are usually materializing in the seance room, I do not really believe that they are apports. I more believe that they are actually materialized, and this is what the spirits actually say. They materialize them. They have, so to speak, an ethereal blueprint, and from that they produce it into the physical, and that's quite spectacular. The spirits use my body in different ways to materialize objects. May they be apported, or may they be solely materialized, because in every apport process, of course, a materialization is taking part as well. A dematerialization at the location where the object was originally, and then it is transported through space and time. And in the seance room, a rematerialization has to happen to let the apport appear. So, but the most objects we see on the videos, I believe that for them only etheric blueprints have existed previously, and from them they are actually produced. And to produce them directly from the medium's body is quite spectacular, when locations like the eyes, for example.
Yes, I saw your video with that. I'm like, whoa, you know?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. They want to show they have control over the most delicate and sensitive areas of the body, because you know how it feels if we only have a piece of dust in our eyes, and how the eye reacts then, watering, reddening. So what we see in these instances, when up to 10, 12 objects exit the eye, that the eye is not reacting on it. And that's a basic state, I believe, of security for the own bodily integrity. When spirit is working with you, then they manage it somehow to keep up that total safety for your and your organs and your body. And incredible things like that can happen.
Wow.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, I was amazed when I saw the video. So everybody check out the YouTube videos, because you're going to be like so amazed when you see them. What type of apports have come through for you?
Oh my God, dear Kathy, over the years, actually, I believe it is actually fair to say that there were thousands of objects that have come through until today. And it's different, for example, from huge explosions of light in front of my breast, of my chest, excuse me, up to 550 gram heavy glass artifacts are producing and falling to the floor, down to small figurines that fall from my empty hand after the hand was being checked by a sitter who is sitting directly in front of it, and the red light is directly besides of us, and he checks the hand, and after it is checked, it gives the hand free, the sitter gives the hand free, and puts his own hands directly below it, and then out of the checked bare hand, these small figurines are falling.
Wow.
Yes.
That is amazing.
Or the spirit entity is using my voice cord and my voice box and is talking to the sitters. The red light is on,
Mhm.
and in midst of the speech, the mouth fills up massively with objects, and no speech is makeable anymore. And first, the mouth has to be unloaded, so to speak.
Oh my goodness.
These are only a few of the different ways objects materialize or become apported in our seances.
Wow. Just amazing. I mean, again, I've only saw this in photos or videos, and but it's just beautiful when when I see these pictures and the things that come through. It's amazing to me. Yeah, I'm still thinking about the video with the stuff coming out of your eyes. Okay, because I'm like, whoa, that would hurt. But for you to say it doesn't affect your eye whatsoever. Very
It
amazing.
doesn't affect the eye, and you need to consider that I am sleeping.
Oh
So,
no.
so
Wow.
there is the trance control that, and it looks as if I am awake, but I am not. I
Wow.
am actually not there, not at all. And all the um, all what is being spoken, or the behaviorism of my body is actually not my speech, is not my voice, is not my behaviorism. It is the behaviorism of the trance control. Mainly, it's the main trance control. His name is Hans, and he claims to be a former German parapsychologist,
Mhm.
and he is responsible for the communication with the sitters. So he's mainly the one who is in charge in regards to conversion and conversation. And yeah, that's quite amazing, these
Yes,
objects that
it is.
build in
And
the eye sockets.
you actually answered my next question, which would have been, um, what is a spirit control, or who is your spirit control? And so you bring in, his name is Hans. Do you have more than one
Oh, yes.
okay.
There's a whole team, and they have all different responsibilities for to make these seance evenings complete ones.
Wow.
For example, there's one personality who is looking after the right mindset of the people, or that the people aren't going afraid or something like that. There's one guide responsible specifically for the phenomena, for the physical phenomena. There's one guide responsible for getting in contact with higher knowledge or higher wisdom, if you wish so. And there's one guide, for example, responsible to change the physical energies, also in the seance room, into healing energies, and several others. So you see, they have all their responsibilities, and in the end, they are all working in the background, um, at the sides of the audible communicator, to make the sounds a complete one and a strong one and a successful one.
Wow. I can only imagine how it would be, or how it would feel to be at one of your circles. I went to the website, and I think there were like a list of things that they request that you don't wear or have
Mhm.
on. Like if you easily fright, maybe you shouldn't go or attend. And I'm sitting there like, okay, well, I do easily fright. So I mean, I want to go to one day. I know I will, but I just loved all the information that was posted there for people that might come as a sitter
Mhm.
there.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, have you experienced any side effects coming out of deep trance? Did you any nausea, anything in the very beginning? I'm sure you're so used to it now, but in the very beginning, do you recall any of those sensations?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. Until today, I have a slight problem with headaches after the trance work. Um, but specifically in the beginning of the deep trance work, we have to consider that a totally different consciousness matrix is coming over, so to speak, my my own psychoneurological connection points, so to speak, and everything has to rearrange to fit with or to match up with that new consciousness matrix that is pulling itself over my own, and that brings many different, or can bring many different forms of irritations with it. So I experienced a lot of them, from depression down to nausea, or basically headaches. My basic problem was basically headaches. But I remember that basically in the beginning I had days of depression in which I only sat and looked at the white wall as a seemingly as an effect of the trance work. And we have inspired so many circles, and out of these many circles, so many new mediums came forward, and we are in contact with them all. And I can tell you, it is absolutely common that all forms of side effects are experienced during the trance itself, but also after the trance.
After the trance. Wow. I'm trying to remember what I was going to ask you here. When your spirit control first came, or no, let me go back one. How did it feel when you blended with spirit for the very first time? I usually like to ask everybody that because they describe it in different ways. Were you frightened when you really felt that? Well, see, you were 4 or 5 then. So I can't really ask you that question because this was happening to you ever since even your sleep state. So when you first started with your trance, when you first and you felt spirit come close to you, how did that feel to you? Was there any fear? Did you have to work through any fear?
Interestingly, I detached myself from fear already during that poltergeist case I was witnessing. And the family was highly intimidated, and they were so afraid of everything what was going on. But I managed to detach myself from fear and was overtaken by a strong, deep fascination. And this strong, deep fascination lasts until today. So I was never afraid. I experienced a lot of different trance communicators. Some were very bright, others were not so bright. For example, I remember the day very well when the former trance guide did exchange with Hans, who is now, since 7 years, for 7 years, he's now our main communicator. And the experience was in so far new that the most trance communicators I had before that, I had the broader or the brighter intellect, you know. But when Hans was coming, I was experiencing for the first time that he probably was brighter than me, or at least had much more knowledge than me in regards to parapsychology, in regards to the history of parapsychology or spiritualism or whatnot. And the trance communicator we were working with beforehand, he was saying, so it's now time, I have to leave now, and there is another trance communicator coming, and he is more sophisticated than me, and he will work with you in the upcoming future. And then Rafi, that was the name, Rafi went, and Hans did come. And interestingly, at the beginning, he was not revealing his name. He was coming with a pseudo, actually, because he hadn't fully decided if he would like to work with us, and not before he was absolutely fine to work with us, he revealed his name and who he allegedly once was on Earth.
So what you're saying is that spirit will come and check on your circle or your group and decide if they want to actually work with you. So it's just not automatic. They're just checking you out sometimes then.
Oh, I mean, there are different forms to get in contact with spirit guides,
Mm-hmm.
but the way we were working at that time with spirit guides, we were actually receiving spirit guides out of a circle of trance guides that were working with us. And one was leaving, another was coming. One was leaving, and another was coming. And of course, this was a decision process for both sides. Do I want to work with that guide or not? And if you do not like to work with the guide, you can tell him to leave.
Wow.
That's not a problem. I mean, these guides, they are there, and their own and their only duty actually is to work with us or to bring us further spiritually. And when you have the impression this guide will not bring me further spiritually, you can kindly ask him to retreat and make space for another. In our workshops, we actually train in the meantime people to get very, very easily in contact with new spirit guides. Actually, our subconsciousness activates these spirit guides. They are there already, but you have no contact to them. Your subconsciousness is finally making, is opening the path, or is activating that spirit guide. And we are teaching this technique also, because getting in contact with spirit guides is like the topic trance, very strangely being taught in different institutions and so forth. And we come back to that, what you mentioned before, a lot of fear, and the people are insecure, or they are even mocked by tutors or whatever. All these things unfortunately happen. And I'm a staunch enemy of that.
Yes.
Because I want to integrate the people and do not want to make them afraid.
Yes. Yes, that's like my biggest thing is to show people or help people understand that there's no fear. There should be no fear here. It should be just absolute love and a very sacred thing to do, or serve spirit in this way and develop for spirit in this way, whether that's trance healing, trance, mediumship, whichever, physical. And so I do want to ask you, are you currently offering workshops or things like that in your area?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, we do.
Okay.
We are offering workshops for a little bit higher number of people, but we are also offering workshops for very small groups. These are usually experimental circles themselves who come to us and want to have new inspiration for their work, or want to have an initial inspiration or motivation or spark, an initial spark for their work. Sometimes these circles and their work slows down, and they believe they have reached a point where they cannot get further. But that is, of course, an illusion. In these experimental circles, you need to consider the things in much bigger time frames as you are usually considering things. So we give them new inspiration and new power to work on. But what I like to mention, because it is very necessary in regards to all that work and in regards to the phenomena which are bringing forward in the circle, these phenomena, they all would have no value if there would not be a very strong spiritual message. The spirit entities are always transferring to us. And this message of basically, there are messages, they are very complex. They are about the nature of reality and consciousness. They are about the meaning of life. They are about the true nature of the spirit worlds which are existing out there. They are about responsibility, about multidimensionality, and in the end about the paradigm shift and what our role is and what we can do, and that we at the moment are in a very predestined times in which we can bring the development much more further, because we are living in the informational society and can connect in a way we never could before, and we can organize ourselves and can organize ourselves in a spiritual manner. And yeah, the thing is that the intelligence or the intelligences which are existing out there, that they are concerned because they are connected with us in a certain way, otherwise we couldn't communicate with them. They are concerned by how we humans live our lives, how we humans live on this planet, how we humans treat us, treat our resources, and treat the planet. And our responsibility goes vastly beyond our seen environment, and there are entities existing on realms or in realms and on dimensional planes. We can call them parallel. Basically, they are connected with ours. And when we fail, when we extinct, they are highly endangered as well. So that's a basic motivation for them to get in contact with us. And of course, because the human being is a kind of very valuable being and so forth, because we have the ability to discern wrong from right. There are uncountable entities in the multiverse who cannot discern the positive from the negative, and that means basically the creational from the exploitive side or character of things, or how we behave, or how we move through our lives. Are we going strengthening through our life and preserving and beholding, or are we going through our lives exploitive, exploiting and having quick successes and quick money and fast cars and so forth? And the spirits say the highest form of human being is when everything what you are, what you think, what you speak, what you do, when every iota of that has turned into something creational from the morning to the evening. That sounds even Buddhistical, yes? But then you have reached the highest forms a human being can reach. And yeah, the Spirit always says, only a small act of forgiveness in your realm can actually release a whole planet that was plagued by whatever. In these relationships, in these unawaited relationships, our actions here on earth can have a connection with something on a parallel realm we have no idea of.
Mhm.
And so we need to be very, very careful what we are and how we are and what we think and what we speak and what we do. And the spirits remind us of these connections and how the human consciousness and the human being is multidimensionally interconnected universally, and how important it is to find a new form of responsibility and, of course, to work towards the paradigm shift. And they try to implement different mm, settings in us to achieve that better earlier than later. And yes, these messages are strong, and they are profound, and they are highly interesting, and we are very happy that we have such a bright communicator who is bringing forward these profound messages from the spirit world.
Oh, I bet.
And
It sounds just unbelievable. I love the philosophy. I love the spiritual teachings that come through. Do you post these things on your blog, on that website?
yeah, from time to time. Actually, we just wanted to bring up a whole website with these messages, but in the meantime, there so much new information came through that we at the moment again have to fill it up, actually, or have to fill in this new information. Unfortunately, we are not allowed to give out direct recordings. That would be much easier. So we have to transcribe that all. We have to transform it from a spoken content into a written content. And that's very, very exhaustive.
Oh,
But the most necessary thing is that in physical mediumship, it does not end with the phenomena. The phenomena are a side effect, sometimes a legitimization for the spirits. They want to show we are not a figment of the medium subconsciousness, and we prove it to you by manipulating your three-dimensional time space in a way the phenomena are representing. And after you have seen this, you will listen to us, because you know that you have seen something that is out of reach of a human being.
wow. Wow. Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you again about the workshops. I know, would they be able to, would members and people that are viewing this interview, would they be able to find your workshops under the Felix Circle blogspot?
They will basically find them at the Basel Psi Association.
Okay.
I'm regularly writing about, this is our second home base, so to speak. There we have the needed space for having, I don't know, 20 people, 20, 25 people. But if you are interested in a private workshop, so to speak, to come to Hanau in the Felix Circle cellar, to work there and to feel the energy we have built up there in the last 15 years, then you simply have to contact Julia, and her contact numbers and so forth and email address is shown on the blog.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Now, one more question on that. Not everybody is going to be able to go to Germany. Do you do anything online? Do you offer any type of workshops or courses or anything like that online?
We are just developing that.
Okay, perfect.
We are just in developing that.
Okay, perfect. A lot of people ask about that because they know they can't get to you, but boy, if they could get online with you, they would totally do it, you know? So I'm glad that you're developing that. So I have just probably a couple more questions for you here. Is there any advice that you can give to someone forming his or her own circle for physical medium?
Oh yes, a lot of advice I have there. But Kathy, do you know what? Because I feel that my tiredness is taking my ability to express myself rightly, and I don't want to ruin that interview, because it is important um, what I would like to share with you.
Oh, sure.
Do you believe we can schedule a second one?
Yes, we can. And we talked about that. So this is interview number 1, and we will pause and go ahead and schedule the second interview. And again, first, I want to thank you so very much, Kai, for taking your time out. I know you're super tired. You did fabulous. And being with us today and sharing your beautiful light with us. Thank you so very much, Kai.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And you have a fabulous rest of your evening. I believe it's evening for you. So
Indeed, yes.
thank you, Kai. You have a great evening.
Thank you. You too,
And we'll
Kathy.
see
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye-bye.